Hey everybody, Daniel from Spacedock here. Now, Hooj is presenting this video, and it's a good one. I'll hand you over to him in a minute. But I just want to take this moment to give you a brief story of something that's happened to us lately that is kind of indicative of the state of YouTube right now. But basically, we did a sponsorship lately for a product which I won't identify. And basically, we went through the usual process. We made the ad for them, we followed all their brief and everything, submitted it to them, and they came back with their notes saying, actually, instead of saying, we've got news from our sponsor, we'd like you to say, hey guys, here's this exciting product that I found. So basically just lie, like pretend it isn't a sponsorship. We came back to them and said, hey, obviously we can't do that, that's illegal and against YouTube's terms of service. And we compromised and said, hey, if you want that kind of excitement vibe in there, we can say exciting news from our sponsors, that's perfectly okay. And they came back again a few days later and said, yeah, we get where you're coming from, but we'd like you to say this. And it was essentially like a slightly reworded version of the same thing. It was, oh, we're really excited to have found this product for you guys. It was functionally identical. So at that point, we said, okay, we're not going to do this. You're obviously trying to get us to do something that we're not comfortable doing. So we're going to call this off. And after a while, they eventually sort of backpedaled and said, okay, fine, you can do the sponsorship in your own words. We can play it properly. Now, at this point, I was kind of thinking, do we really have to do this? But at the current state of affairs on YouTube, ad revenue is so bad across the whole platform that you're stuck dealing with sponsors. You have to do this kind of stuff. And also, these days, it's almost impossible to find a sponsorship offer that isn't some kind of, obvious scam. There's so many weird AI-generated ones going around and all kinds of nonsense. It's not as good of a market as it used to be. And this one, it was a fairly legitimate influencer agency and stuff, so we went, okay, fine, if they're gonna pay us and they're okay with the decent wording, fine. So we go ahead with it, it goes out, advert's fine, no word from them. 45 days, we're told, is the outside estimate of how long we can expect to be paid within, which is longer than the usual estimate, which is already fairly ridiculous. 45 days passed, and we said, hey, there's still no payment, where's our payment? It eventually went on for so long that in an act of incredibly cool behavior from the influencer agent, they paid us and said, okay, we'll take on the burden of chasing these people, basically, so that you guys can get your pay. And it took 2 months for that to happen. And really, they shouldn't have had to foot the bill for that. This is the fault of the sponsors. And yeah, it's apparently, I'm not really on TikTok that much, apart from a bit of SOJOURN stuff, but apparently it's now fairly normal for people to be demanding that you pretend it's not an advert. And yeah, it's beyond me. It's a ridiculous state of affairs. It's almost impossible to get payment this way, and it's one of the only remaining options with ad revenue being so bad. All of this to say, thank you so much to everyone who supports us on Patreon, because really, more than ever, it's what's keeping this afloat, and it's the better that Patreon does, the more we don't have to do nonsense like this, which is just dispiriting, really, and being taken for a ride by people who are making exploitative products and exploiting not only us, but also the influencer agency and stuff like that. Ridiculous state of affairs. I'm happy to say that the latest Spacedock reference book, the Battleship one, has had a really good launch, which means we don't have to consider this kind of stuff that much anymore. And today even we're dropping a wallpaper pack associated with that. There's a free wallpaper in there for everyone and a set of 4 others for anyone who pledges on the lowest tier. And obviously if you pledge on the middle tier, you get not only the new reference book, but the whole backlog of existing reference books. And we intend to try and continue a rate of 1 of those per year going forwards, if not faster. The next one's going to be realism focused, which I know a lot of you wanted. So yeah, just to let you know, to give you a bit of a report from the ground there on what some of the kind of nonsense we have to deal with is these days, and just how much of a difference you really are making if you support Spacedock on Patreon, or if you support any independent product on YouTube, independent creators, anyone you want to support. You're making more of a difference than ever before, really, in terms of making sure they can pay their rent and pay their staff without having to participate in some of the kind of nonsense that's going around these days. Anyway, it's Adeptus Mechanicus now. Good video. Go and check it out. Hope you enjoy it. Thanks for listening. Have a good one.
And now onto the main topic of the video itself, one of the best factions in Warhammer 40,000, the wonderfully juxtaposed Adeptus Mechanicus, the Techpriests of Mars. We'll be looking at all the various things that makes them so interesting, and what their deepest and darkest secret might be. Firstly, for those unfamiliar with Warhammer 40k, what is the Adeptus Mechanicus? Essentially, they are the technological backbone of humanity in the grim darkness of the setting. If there's something scientific or technical in the Imperium of Man, the Mechanicus are the only ones able to maintain and run it. But they're also a bit separate from the rest of the Imperium, being allowed to worship the Omnissiah, the machine god, instead of the Emperor, and their seat of power resides on Mars, not Holy Terror. This split of powers by itself is already pretty interesting, making humanity more of a symbiotic two-state nation, as opposed to the singular entity or friendly combination of many that we typically see in sci-fi. The most visible element of the Mechanicus is the Tech Priest, a delightful combination of contrasting terms that shows the really interesting side of the Mechanicus. Tech Priests are extensively augmented, choosing to replace their living part with machines in search of some form of greater purity. Then on top of all that technology, they wear robes. They swing around censers filled with burning incense. They chant prayers to the Omnissiah. They're the perfect little encapsulation of the amazing contrast between the two sides of the coin that is the Mechanicus. This sort of tension is at the heart of everything in the faction, which is made all the more intriguing by the existence of the machine spirit, which is exactly what it sounds like, the soul of technological devices. The more complex the device, the more capable and powerful the machine spirit is, to the point of even being able to run autonomously. And this isn't AI, that's banned, and a topic for later. No, this is probably actual spirits and souls, because those exist in the setting along with magic and psychic powers and stuff. It may need to be coddled with ritual, and can even be corrupted or possessed by demons from the warp. Though at other times, it may also just be misunderstood technology, because really, the Mechanicus barely knows what they're doing because of the overall state of decay and ignorance that the entirety of humanity finds themselves in the setting. Overall, it's similar to the weird way YouTube's algorithm works, which you can assist with by performing the ritual of liking and clicking that thumbs up button. We shall return to their weird and often hypocritical lore later on, because I want to talk about how all this impacts their martial units. Because yeah, they may be part of the Imperium, but also being separate from wider humanity means the Mechanicus have their own spaceships, armies, vehicles and troops. Like the ever-popular Skitarii, whose recent and long-awaited addition to Darktide led to a bunch of very odd memes. These Skitarii are augmented human troops, but like everything Mechanicus, they have all sorts of contrasts built right into them. They wear robes like the Tech Priests who control them, and they use antiquated looking but powerful and at times exotic weaponry like lightning guns and vibroblades. Some Skitarii may go on to be upgraded over time, gaining more independence, or if they become wounded, they may be repurposed into the terrifying Sicarians, moving further away from the baseline humanity they began as. Others still may be modified to be more specialized, like the Taraxi and their weirdly Da Vincian wings, which is where we get into one of the really obvious parts of the juxtaposition within the Mechanicus, which is the anachronisms inherent in many Skitarii units and vehicles, like the Archaeopter, which takes those Da Vincian wings and uses them on a small aircraft, or the two types of robotic cavalry that are available. There's kind of a good theme going on here, but then you get to the World War II landing craft hovering things that I don't like because they're so totally out of place. In fact, I don't really like any of the stuff from that release period. The aforementioned Taraxi don't commit hard enough to being modified humans. They just look like they have a backpack on. Their wings should have replaced their arms, and the Robodog cavalry doesn't fit in with the style of previous walkers. At least the most recent Tech Priest hero is delightfully bizarre and insectile. Now it's time to get back to the Mechanicus lore, because there's just so many fascinating layers and contradictions everywhere. Like the way they're always on the hunt for tech, but mostly this is all really old stuff, from the dark age of technology. A period of great advancements for humanity, much of which has been lost or forgotten. So why don't the supposedly technological faction make new things? Well, for one, as said earlier, they don't really understand what they're doing, so anyone who does tinker and create is likely to cause problems, so that's why technological and scientific development is banned. So the big tech faction of humankind can't make tech, and this is kind of understandable when you're dealing with weapons and power plants that are apocalyptically powerful. Going deeper into this stagnant high-tech that's low-tech side of things, we get to to AI, abominable intelligence, the use and development of which is deemed super ultra heretical because back in ancient history, AI nearly wiped out humanity. This bit of lore is one of those foundational things of the setting that's unashamedly taken from Dune, though the effect it had on things is very different. Humanity still has computers and robots and things, but they also make heavy use of cyborgs, like the Skitarii, or even more basic ones like servitors, which are lobotomized people used for even basic things like opening doors, transcribing text, and manual labor. Even the full-blown robot the Mechanicus uses in its military is not smart, it just runs basic programs and needs to be shepherded by a tech priest. Now compare that with what we said earlier about the machine spirit. That is fine, lauded even, but AI? Not allowed in any way. How interesting is that combination? This almost hypocritical streak within the Mechanicus goes even deeper, because despite what I said earlier about not being allowed to develop tech, there are still those that do just that. If they go far enough down this path, they become known as Hereteks, which is a brilliant word, but they also might not be deemed such, like Belisarius Call, a really big shot tech priest who ushered in the current era of improved Primaris Space Marines and all of their fancy new tech. The advancements he used to make these upgrades sure do seem a little convenient for him to have found old versions of, don't you think? At least he probably didn't integrate alien technology into his work, which is what xenorite tech priests are most interested in. This idea isn't heretical by itself. The Mechanicus at large do spend a lot of time digging through unfathomably ancient Necron ruins after all, though examining alien tech skims the heretical line and can very often step over it. The most famous xenorites, and where the term comes from in the first place, is the entire forge world of Styges 8. This flaunting of what to us may seem like pointless and backwards laws has made this forge world, and characters from it, very popular amongst fans. With all of that in mind, the contradictions, the contrasts, the hypocrisy, we get to the big dark secret of the Mechanicus, the Dragon of Mars. This impossibly ancient entity was long ago locked deep below the surface of the planet by the Emperor, and from there it has influenced the priesthood who laboured above it. What is this dragon? We don't know. It may be the Omnissiah that the Mechanicus worship, it may be something entirely unknown and unique, but it also may be part of the Void Dragon, one of the Catan, the star-devouring gods of the Necrons who hail from shortly after the birth of the universe. The implications, if that is true, are immense, and ties back into everything else that makes the Adeptus Mechanicus the most fascinating faction in Warhammer 40,000. You can support Spacedock by joining our Patreon, where you can get our frigate, fighter, carrier, and battleship design reference books, as well as early access to upcoming videos and wallpapers. Alternatively, become a channel member here on YouTube. To our supporters, thank you.